Gas prices are killing our budgets. The national average for gas has risen to $4.52 a gallon. That is $1.33 higher than it was last year at this time. You aren't the only one that's frustrated, it turns out, and worried. Gas station owners say they too are struggling with this. Joining me now is Chris Bambury, a gas station owner in Sonoma Valley, California. His family has been selling gas in the valley for more than 100 years. Pretty incredible. That is a very long time. So I got to ask you first, what are you charging for regular unleaded in California right now?
Oh, we're about $6.40 a gallon for regular unleaded.
Whew. All right. Your family has been in the gas business for more than 100 years. That means that you were around your family was around during the gas shortages of the Carter years. Give me a sense of what this gas spike now looks like for you, what it means.
The most volatile we've ever seen. So my father lived through that definitely, and was operating during the Carter years and the long lines and running out of product and a lot of challenges then. But this has been so volatile with the up and down. You really can't comprehend, where it's going to go. One day it's coming down, next day back up. So most volatility we've ever seen in my lifetime in the industry.
That's saying something for a family that's been through this for 100 years, and you've been around for a bit, just watching all this happen. Look, as drivers, when we pull up to the gas station, we tend to look at the prices and blame y'all a little bit and say, like, what are these gas stations, like, what are they doing charging this money? Do you benefit at all from high gas prices?
No, our industry fares worse, and we never like high gas prices. Customers really do not like the prices high. They come in, they're much more upset about where the market's at and how much it hurts their pocketbook. Our industry gets even more compressed and competitive when it's higher prices. Just really for the customers are looking around shopping, and just it's a much tougher industry to deal with when prices are high.
What are the margins like for you? Because you have to deal with the wholesale gas price and then pass some of that on to the consumer, obviously. What are the margins there for y'all?
They are definitely compressed. Like I said, when the market is high, we again see they're much more livable and fair margins when prices are low, but not faring well as at all during now with the current high prices.
Just quickly, first of all, I've always wanted to know the answer to this question, so now you're getting it. When you are going to get for gas, and there are two gas stations right across from each other on the corner, and one is 10 cents higher than the other, how is that decided? Is it the company that you're dealing with, whether it's Exxon or BP, or is it something else?
No, everybody independently. We all set our own pricing as independent operators. You can choose to be more competitive, maybe choose to be higher priced slightly and offer more value, more services for your customers, like more staff. So it's all very, very dynamic, and really not at all anything as far as setting or doing any pricing together.
Okay, understood. I know you're going through it. A lot of people are. That $6.40 a gallon was hard to swallow. I think I just got hiccups from hearing that number, and I know it's making you nervous too. Chris Bambury, thank you so much for coming on and walking us through all that, explaining it.
From the gas pump to the grocery store, higher prices are weighing on Americans' wallets.
Even when you go to the grocery now, it's very scary. Because before with the $10, you could have your lunch. But now, everything more expensive.
New data released this week showed for the first time in 3 years, Americans' paychecks no longer outpaced inflation. And as for grocery prices, those rose more than 0.5% last month. That is the most grocery prices have increased over a 1-month period in nearly 4 years since August 2022. Joining us now is Stu Leonard Jr., CEO of Stu's Grocery Store. Stu, it's always great to have you on. Looks like a beautiful day where you are. I want to start by asking you what you are personally seeing at your stores and what products are being hit the hardest.
Well, I think the gentleman you just had on says it all. You're just hearing from customers all the time, prices are up on grocery. Now, first of all, we get targeted a little bit. I mean, it's Stu Leonard's. It's like, you're the culprit or you're making extra money. We're not. Just as an example, in the morning, I got a phone call yesterday from our farmer down in Florida with all the tomatoes, watermelon. And he said, you know what, Stu, it's costing me $2,000 more to send a tractor trailer from Florida up to your stores in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. And then I go down on the store floor and a customer comes up and says, I just filled my Suburban up. It was $50 more than it did cost me. So what do? I can't raise prices over here. But then again, I got my farmers in Florida telling me their labor costs have gone up and the fuel prices have gone up. So we're stuck in the middle a little bit. What I've done basically is ask a farmer in Florida if I could split the difference with him, and he pays half of the freight and I pay the other half. And that's been working out so far.
We're just a week or so away, Stu, from Memorial Day weekend. What do you think this all might mean for families looking to celebrate the holiday with a backyard barbecue? Do you anticipate this continuing into the summer months as well?
Now, Wolf, you know what? With the barbecue coming up, you know what that's about? You're getting some hot dog and hamburger buns. You're going to have, of course, you got some great hamburgers. Okay, this is only about $4 or $5 a pound right now. But you know what? One way you can save money is here's like a ribeye steak. We just had our ranchers back from the Midwest, and this is what they wanted to eat. But this is really expensive right here. So if you want to save money, go to the hamburger right there and do that. You also have hot dogs. And the other thing, Wolf, you mentioned you had some salmon last night. Check this guy out right here, okay? This is about $10 a pound. How's that guy? Look at he's my little buddy
30
there.
pounds?
That's a 30-pound salmon, and we'll cut it fresh, but that's about $10 a pound for fresh salmon. Beef is up in the $15 to $16 to $17 a pound. Chicken, I talked to Jimmy Perdue from Perdue Farms yesterday. That's come down. He's noticing a spike in customers moving from the higher priced proteins like meat down to lower price like chicken. So he's seeing an increase in sales at Perdue Farms.
Interesting. And you were mentioning earlier that the people who bring the food up to you, the truck drivers and so forth, and those companies are battling the higher gas prices. And so you're trying to help them out. But also customers are also dealing with these rising gas prices, and that could be affecting their buying habits at the grocery store. How else is high fuel costs hitting your business? What are you hearing from customers?
Well, fuel touches every part of food. Even from fertilizer that's stuck over in the Strait of Hormuz right now, I mean, that is coming over, needs energy to get here. You look at the diesel that the farmers have to put into their tractors. And right now, this is like prime time for a lot of our beautiful East Coast fruits and vegetables right now. So, you're seeing fuel touch everything. That's a big driver. My fingers are crossed that we're going to work this fuel problem out. We're going to see fuel prices drop. When they do that, we'll see food prices drop, but not back to where they were, just after COVID, because a lot of labor costs have gone up, along the way also.
The salmon I had last night, Stu, was delicious, by the way. Stu Leonard Jr., as usual. Thank you very much for all you do. Thanks very much for joining
us. I'm coming to visit you.
All right, I love that salmon.
How does this? That seems like a lot. I want to know what went into it.
Right now, President Trump is on his way back, as you know, from a critical summit with Chinese President Xi. He is on Air Force One, making his way back to the United States. Speaking this morning on Air Force One, he made some eyebrow-raising statements, including a non-commitment on Taiwan arms sales that Congress has already approved to the tune of about $14 billion. He also talked about the Strait of Hormuz. How do you, the American people, feel about the president's handling of all these huge, important issues? And that is where CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton comes in. So just where is Donald Trump right now in the minds of Americans?
We've had all of these big events that have been going on, and sometimes I think it's worth taking the 35,000 point view, right? That viewpoint from up in the sky, and we could just see it is you could see it here. You know, this is the aggregate of my aggregate of polling data that, you know, you're looking at here. And it's just a steady climb downward into the Red Sea because Trump's net approval rating hits a new low. You could see it right here, 20 points underwater. And what you just see on your screen right here is it's been a steady climb downward. You know, you go back to January of 2025. At the beginning it was +6, then -6. By May 2025, -9, -14, -15. But over the last few months, as the Iran war has taken shape, as those gas prices have jumped through the roof, Trump has hit a new low. He's at -20 points, which is the lowest point of his second term.
So you talk about this being an aggregate, so the average of what's happening. What about individual polling? What did you see?
Yeah, okay, so this is the average of polling. But I was just thinking, hey, have there been any polls recently in which Trump has not had a negative net approval rating like he does in the aggregate of polling? And you go back in time, because this really just sort of takes the cakes. Trump's negative net approval rating, every poll since March 29, 2025, that is over a year ago, you can't find a single poll in which he has anything but a net negative approval rating. That is 413 days in a row. That is more than 365. It is more than a year. Trump has been underwater, not just in the aggregate, but every single poll.
There is one thing that people have noticed, and this happens sort of not as much in his last administration, that he's done a lot of things, from tariffs to the war in Iran. It's not like necessarily things people like, but there have been a lot of moves made by this president. Hasn't it helped him at all, or it has actually done the opposite?
Yeah, exactly right. It's done the exact opposite, because you see this every single poll for over a year, 413 days. And you go to yourself, you know what the most important thing is when it comes to presidential politics? Pretty much all the time. It's the economy, Smarty, right over there. And you just look right at this and you say, the net effect on your personal finances. The best of the group is the tax law, right? That's 16 points underwater. How about tariffs? 49 points underwater. How about the Iran war? That effect on your finances? 67 points underwater. No wonder Trump is underwater in every single poll. No wonder he's hitting new lows in the aggregate. Because when it comes to the economy, the reason he won a second term, all of the signature pieces of either legislation or events, he is underwater by a ton. I mean, 67 points underwater. Whoosh.
Yeah, but it's because people are paying $4.50 plus a gallon average. That's part of it.
Right now, as we speak, President Trump is somewhere over the Pacific on Air Force One, flying home from a summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And on that plane, he made a comment that should worry every American, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. He would not commit to delivering $14 billion in arms sales to Taiwan that Congress has already approved. He also floated new ideas about the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point where roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through every single day. Those are enormous geopolitical moves, the kind that reshape alliances and rattle global markets. So the question is, does the American public still trust this president to make calls that big? The polling says no, and it's not even close. Donald Trump's net approval rating just hit -20 points, the lowest mark of his entire second term. That number comes from the aggregate of major national polls, and the trajectory is what should grab your attention. In January 2025, Trump was actually above water at +6. By spring, he'd slipped to -6, then -9, -14, -15, and now -20. That is a 26-point swing in roughly 18 months. You're not looking at a dip, you're looking at a free fall. And here's the detail that really puts this into perspective. There has not been a single national poll, not one, that has given Trump a positive net approval rating since March 29th, 2025. That is 413 consecutive days of being underwater in every single survey conducted. Over a year of universal disapproval across every major polling outfit in the country. Gallup, Pew, Quinnipiac, Fox News, CNN, it doesn't matter. Every single one. So what's driving this? Because a president can survive bad poll numbers if the public believes the economy is working. That's the fundamental rule of American politics. James Carville nailed it in 1992, and it hasn't changed since. It's the economy. It's always the economy. And on the economy, Trump is drowning. Let's walk through his 3 signature policy pillars and how the public grades each one. The tax law, which was supposed to be the crown jewel of this administration's domestic agenda, sits at 16 points underwater. 16. That means even a policy designed to put more money in people's pockets is viewed negatively by a significant margin of the country. The tariff regime, which the president has championed as a tool to rebuild American manufacturing and punish foreign competitors, is 49 points underwater. And the Iran conflict, and specifically its financial impact on ordinary families, is 67 points underwater. 67. That is not a policy that's struggling to find its audience. That is a policy that the public has roundly, overwhelmingly rejected. And if you're wondering why those numbers are so catastrophic, the answer is probably sitting in your driveway right now. The national average price for a gallon of regular unleaded gasoline has climbed to $4.52. That is $1.33 more than Americans were paying at this exact time last year. $1.33 doesn't sound like a revolution on paper, but multiply that by 15 gallons in your tank, and you're spending an extra $20 every time you fill up. Do that twice a week, and you're hemorrhaging over $160 a month that you didn't budget for. For a family living paycheck to paycheck, and roughly 60% of American households fall into that category, that is the difference between making rent and not. And if you happen to live in California, the situation is significantly worse. Chris Bambury runs a gas station in Sonoma Valley. His family has been in the fuel business for over 100 years. They were pumping gas during the Carter-era shortages, when Americans sat in lines that stretched for blocks, just hoping the station wouldn't run dry before their turn came. Bambury says what's happening right now is worse than anything his family has experienced in a century of selling gasoline, not because of shortages, but because of the sheer volatility. Prices whip up one day and crash the next, making it nearly impossible to plan, budget, or set margins. At his station, regular unleaded is $6.40 a gallon. Let that math register for a second. A 16-gallon fill-up at Bambury's station cost over $102 for one tank of gas. And here's the part of this story that tends to get lost. Gas station owners are not getting rich off this. Bambury is clear about that. When prices are high, customers are angry, and they take that anger out at the pump. They shop around more aggressively. They drive to the station a quarter-mile down the road to save 4 cents a gallon. The margins don't expand when prices climb, they compress. The competitive pressure intensifies, the customer base gets more hostile. Nobody in the supply chain is celebrating these prices, from the refinery to the corner station. And if you've ever driven past 2 gas stations sitting across the street from each other, one selling for $4.49 and the other for $4.59, and wondered what on earth explains the 10-cent gap, Bambury has your answer. Every independent operator sets their own price. It's not Exxon or BP calling the shots from some corporate boardroom. Each station owner is making their own call based on their wholesale costs, their local competition, and whether they want to eat a thinner margin to move more volume or hold the line and hope drivers don't notice. That 10-cent gap is 100 tiny business decisions happening in real time across thousands of stations. Now, gas prices are the headline. They're the number on the giant sign you can see from the highway. But the damage doesn't stop at the pump. It ripples through every part of the supply chain until it lands squarely on your dinner table. New data out this week showed that for the first time in 3 years, American paychecks are no longer outpacing inflation. That is a critical threshold. For most of 2023, 2024, and into early 2025, wage growth was actually beating the rate of price increases. Workers were technically gaining ground, even if it didn't always feel like it. That buffer is now gone. Your raise, if you got one, is being eaten alive by the cost of everything around you. Grocery prices rose more than 0.5% in just the last month. That is the steepest single-month increase in grocery costs since August 2022, when inflation was running at levels we hadn't seen since the early 1980s. We are creeping back toward those numbers, and the people who run the grocery stores are the first to feel it. Stu Leonard Jr. is the CEO of Stu Leonard's, a grocery chain operating across New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. He's been in the food business his entire life, and he's caught in the same squeeze as Bambury at the gas station. His farmers in Florida are calling him with bad news. It now costs $2,000 more to send a single tractor trailer of produce from Florida up to the Northeast. $2,000 more per truck. That cost doesn't vanish. It gets absorbed somewhere. Either the farmer eats it, or the grocer eats it, or the customer eats it. Usually usually it's some painful combination of all three. Leonard says he's been splitting the freight increase with his suppliers, each side swallowing half. It's a temporary arrangement and everyone knows it. If fuel prices stay elevated through the summer, those handshake deals will collapse and the full cost gets passed to consumers. And the fuel connection to food is even deeper than transportation. Think about fertilizer. A significant portion of the chemical inputs that American farmers rely on to grow crops originates from or passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the very waterway President Trump was musing about from Air Force One. The diesel that powers tractors during planting season, the refrigeration units that keep produce fresh in transit, the energy that runs processing plants, distribution warehouses, and the stores themselves. Fuel is woven into every single step between the field and your refrigerator. With Memorial Day weekend approaching, the traditional kickoff to summer grilling season, Leonard walked through the math for American families trying to plan a backyard barbecue. Ground beef is still relatively accessible at $4 to $5 a pound, but a ribeye steak has climbed into the $15 to $17 range. Fresh salmon runs about $10 a pound. Hot dogs remain a budget option, which is exactly why more families will be reaching for them. And chicken, interestingly, has actually come down in price, largely because demand is surging. Jimmy Perdue of Perdue Farms has reported a noticeable migration of consumers away from expensive beef and toward chicken as a more affordable protein. When millions of families simultaneously downgrade from steak to chicken breast, that tells you everything about where the American consumer's head is at right now. This is the feedback loop that makes economic disapproval so politically toxic. Gas prices go up, so transportation costs go up, so food prices go up, so discretionary spending goes down, so small businesses suffer, so consumer confidence craters, so poll numbers collapse. Each link in that chain reinforces the next. And for a president who won his second term largely on the promise that he would fix the economy, that chain is now wrapped tightly around his approval ratings. Consider the historical parallels. Jimmy Carter's presidency was defined by an energy crisis and the economic malaise it produced. Gas lines, inflation, a sense that the country had lost its footing. Carter entered office with approval ratings in the high 60s and left with some of the lowest numbers in modern polling history. The lesson from Carter's era wasn't that Americans punish presidents for bad luck. It's that Americans punish presidents who appear unable to control the forces shaping their daily lives. The perception of helplessness is more damaging than any single policy failure. George H.W. Bush learned the same lesson in 1992. He'd presided over the end of the Cold War and won a decisive military victory in the Gulf. His foreign policy credentials were impeccable. But the economy sputtered into recession, and the public didn't care about Berlin walls or desert campaigns when they were worried about their mortgage. Bush lost to a young governor from Arkansas who understood that the conversation at every kitchen table in America was about money, not missiles. Trump's situation carries echoes of both. He has been active on the world stage, the China summit, the Iran conflict, the Strait of Hormuz maneuvering. His defenders will argue that these are bold moves by a president willing to make difficult decisions, and that argument might land if the domestic picture were stable. But it's not. The Iran conflict has contributed directly to energy disruption. The tariff regime has added cost pressure across imported goods. And the tax law, while putting some money back into pockets, hasn't been enough to offset the price increases hitting every other category of household spending. The compounding problem for the White House is that these aren't separate issues. They're all connected. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a foreign policy chess piece. It's the artery that feeds global oil markets, which set the price you pay at the pump, which determines what your grocer charges for tomatoes. When a president makes geopolitical moves that directly impact the cost of living, voters don't evaluate the strategy in isolation. They evaluate it at the checkout counter. 413 days. That's how long it has been since a single national poll showed the American public giving this president a positive net approval rating. 18 months of steady decline from +6 to -20. Every signature policy initiative underwater, some by catastrophic margins. Gas at $4.52 nationally and $6.40 in California. Grocery prices climbing at their fastest pace in 4 years. Wages no longer keeping up. Families downgrading from ribeye to ground beef, from ground beef to hot dogs, from beef to chicken. This is not a political argument. It's arithmetic. And right now, the math is not working for most American families. The question heading into the summer months isn't whether these trends will reverse. It's whether the forces driving them, the Iran conflict, the tariff structure, the energy market disruption, are even capable of producing a reversal under current policy. Because if gas prices remain above $4.50 through July and grocery inflation continues at this pace, the conversation in November won't be about China summits or Taiwan arms deals. It will be about the number on the pump and the total at the register. That's the reality facing this White House. And based on every piece of data we have, the American public already knows it.